Good afternoon. My name is Nancy Hill, and this is the City of Liberty Lake Parks and Arts Commission meeting. It's Monday, July 1st, 2024 at 4 p.m. We're going to start the meeting today by going through a roll call of the commissioners. Nancy Hill, present. David Heimbaugh.
Present.
Laura Frank. She on Zoom yet? Okay. Laura's here. Katie Ferris. Here. John Bear.
Here.
Noel Laparco.
Present.
Bob Schneidmiller is absent, and he's let us know, so that would be an excused absence. Joni Hay. Is Joni online? Okay, and our student commissioner position is vacant. Please let the record show that we also have staff: Tate Hunter, Jen Camp, Mark McAvoy, our city administrator, and Mikhail. I'm gonna get that, but I don't even, I'm sorry, what's your last name? Stevens, okay. Stevens are all present from staff. Our first agenda item will be the approval of the June 3rd, 2024 meeting minutes. Has everyone had a chance to look at it? And do you have any edits or corrections? And if not, we'll need a motion.
I move that we approve the minutes from the June meeting.
My second.
It's been approved by, moved by David and seconded by Noel. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Please show the motion carried. Moving on to our citizen comments portion of the agenda. Do we have any citizen? We don't have any citizens in the building. What about online? No one online. All right, seeing no citizen comments, we'll move on to item 5, our unfinished new business. And Laura, I added you to the agenda for the Pavilion Historical Outlook in case you have an update. Do you have any updates for us?
Just a small update. So I did get a quote. We had discussed last month about potentially rebuilding that ticket booth. So I did get just kind of a budgetary estimate, and conservatively no more than $10,000 to rebuild it, potentially much cheaper. I talked to Greenstone, and if it's something of interest, they said they can, if they have a design, they can start setting some lumber aside from projects to be able to donate to do that. And a comment when I was having those discussions also brought up is, if there's a design for that build, is it something that might be a good Eagle Scout project if you have some of the materials donated and a plan, because it's a very simple frame structure. I'm not exactly sure what's housed in there, Jen, so you might be able to speak more to that, if there would be any potential issues, or if there's even Eagle Scouts looking for a project. It was just an idea that was thrown out when we were discussing it.
I haven't had any Eagle Scouts reach out in at least the last year, which is interesting because there for a long time I had several reach out on a continual basis. And 2, yes, there is a complication to that ticket booth because it's got power in it and it's got a electrical panel in it. So there will have to be some thought put into that part of it. And we
Can
have
we essentially rebuild as is, though?
what's that?
Can we rebuild as is? So the same, I know there's the power in that. If you're rebuilding on that same, I know there's not a foundation, but that same basic shape and structure.
Yeah, I mean, if we were to do that in-house, that's how we would just make it what it was.
Okay, I didn't know if there were any code updates that would prevent us from just rebuilding it as is.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd need to follow up with our planning department on things like that. That's a world I'm not familiar with. So I would definitely run it through them first, but.
Okay, and then I also did reach out for some estimates for a high and low end for the information kiosk piece. And I really need to have the information on the top plate and what size it's going to be. So roughly what I've been given is between 3,000 and 10,000. depending on the complexity that we want. We've looked at a pretty basic tube frame type structure, so I would assume that it's going to be lower than that. But again, I think it depends on the final dimensions once we receive that from the Historical Society.
Okay, and I see on that line item in our plan, we have $20,000 assigned to that, so from what I'm hearing you say, we could probably do the overlook and then fix the ticket booth and kind of make that a project for that whole area to enhance the look of the overlook.
That was my thought, yeah.
So ideally, we need to complete that this year. So Jen, would next steps be that on the ticket booth that you check with planning and see what would be resolved there, and if we could move forward with trying to get that done this year as part of the project?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. All right, so we'll keep that in mind, and yeah, if we could do that whole thing. I don't know if there's gonna be any landscaping costs for around the outlet look, or we'll want any kind of boulder or rock to go under it, or what that might look like, but it looks like we have some extra funding.
We should be within budget, I think.
So just so I'm clear on this, the commission is looking at receiving a donation potentially from Greenstone on the materials. And this potentially would be a donated project regarding the efforts of redoing this ticket booth. Is that correct?
I think that still needs to be fleshed out. I was just saying when I was chatting with them, looking for a rough budgetary estimate on what it might cost to rebuild it. They had just brought up that if there's an Eagle Scout, or, they could potentially start saving pieces of lumber from different various projects, because they end up having leftovers oftentimes and could set some aside for that project. So
Okay.
details need to be fleshed out.
Just so I'm aware, because there will be different processes if we're procuring it or we're receiving it as a donated project, similar to kind of what happened with the Rocky Snack Shack. If it's a procured process, we have to follow our procurement processes in order to basically purchase a contractor to come in and do the work. So
Yes.
two totally different items. I will need guidance on which direction we're going.
Yes. Well, and if there are no Eagle Scouts looking for a project, then that may alter the course that we would take.
Yeah, otherwise we can continue to put it on our agenda for next year on the CFP to put some money towards just renovating that thing, basically rebuilding it as part of our building maintenance, because it is on our asset management plan. It is called out on our asset management plan. But that would be next year.
I don't know about the other commissioners, but if we have leftover money from the actual overlook, even with landscaping around it, and we could spruce up the look of the ticket booth, which will become glaringly visible all of a sudden, then, and we have the budget for it, it could be within the scope of that project, I think, since it's historical. Do you agree?
The trick will be how, if, when are we going to find an Eagle Scout to do that project?
Well, I mean, I'm thinking, what if we hired a contractor and they could do it for, say, 10,000 or less? I mean, I don't know if that would be possible, because everything costs a lot.
Yeah.
Well, it's something that we can consider anyway, depending on when we get some final numbers for the actual holder for the historic information, I think.
Do you have, Jen, a plan for that building as it's built, or was it just built around the power supply there in the junction box?
We wouldn't have any of those plans. Those are probably long gone with the county at this point.
Okay. Would we need to have a set of plans to be able to rebuild it, or how would that?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I would have to look into that.
The county does archive their plans to some extent, so, and since that was pre-incorporation, they might have something.
I know we've tried getting plans from them in the past regarding pavilion and have not had good luck.
Oh.
So I can check into the structural side with the pavilion shelter, but I don't know that
Right.
how far we'll get, but I
Okay.
can look into it.
Okay. Anything else on that, Laura?
No.
Okay, so our next agenda item is the Kramer Liberty Lake Together Call to Artists. Any updates on that?
So the call timeframe has officially closed and we did not receive any proposals. I did, however, just this week hear from a local artist. It's an artist team and they have an idea and they've asked if they can meet, if I would be available to meet with them so they could look at the call to artists with me and kind of go over what their idea for the project would be.
Okay,
So I'm going to follow up with that and schedule a meeting with them just to learn more and see what they have in mind. But otherwise, I don't know how the commission wants to proceed forward. I didn't receive any inquiries. A couple of the people that I sent it to and directors of various local arts groups seemed enthusiastic and were excited that there was a healthy budget. And thought that it would be attractive to artists. So I was surprised and disappointed that we didn't receive any proposals.
do you believe you'll have that meeting before our August meeting?
Yeah, we're looking to do it next week.
All right, well, my suggestion would be we'll just kind of table this agenda item till next meeting and hear what Laura has to report on that, and then we can see what direction we want to go.
Agreed.
Or if you need me to jump in on the meeting, let me know.
Yeah, I can let you know. I'll let you know once I hear from them what days work best and see if you're available.
Okay.
And then Nancy, if I may just jump on the other call to artists that's not on the agenda for Trailhead because that one has also closed.
Oh, I forgot.
I did receive two kind of mock-up proposals for a map, and then I received a handful of other artists that submitted portfolio work. This is, from what I understand, this is pretty typical for a call to artists that if we like their style from their portfolio, that we would ask them to develop a proposal. So that seems pretty standard. I'll kind of put a compilation together and share with the group what was submitted. And then maybe next month or in the interim, get some feedback on what commissioners think and what path forward. Again, with Trailhead, because it's inside, it's not as critical to pick an artist quickly because they can work in the winter and the time frame for that project should only be about a week, 2 weeks max for that size of work inside. So if we wanted to try to go back out with another call, we could certainly do that. I know summer, especially for a lot of muralists, summer is a very busy season. So we may have missed out on some submissions just because of schedule availability. So just another thought on that project if we don't want to necessarily force it through, feeling if we don't have enough proposals to really kind of sift through and feel like we're getting the best selection out of it.
Okay, so for next step, you'll share some of the information on the artists you did hear from, and we can look at it and then decide if we want to reopen the call to artists and move on from there. And we'll just talk about that at our next meeting.
If that sounds good to the rest of the group.
Everyone, sounds good?
Yep.
Okay. All right, speaking of Trailhead, I did the student art is all turned in, and I think we've seen the pictures of that at our last meeting. The frames came in, they matted and framed the pictures. I met with the city's facilities department over there, and we looked at the layout from the art teachers and mapped out with their cool laser thing where the pictures should go, and then I left, so I'm assuming they're hung.
Not yet.
Not yet. Oh, well, they're almost hung. There's a plan to hang them, so they should go up in the next few weeks, I would imagine. So I meant to drive over there before the meeting and then I forgot. So anyway, it's exciting. They look so good.
Exciting.
Yeah. Okay, next up on the agenda is Story Walk. David?
Yes. Okay, let me scroll through my email here. I just had it.
Okay.
So I spoke to Salvador at Spokane Valley Tech, and they've recently added a plasma cutter which is, makes their job a lot easier for cutting metal. So, they are open to doing something with us, for 2025. I would just need to set up a meeting with him to find out, and maybe he can even join, our August meeting. So, he, we just need to know what our budget is, what we need specifically. And what I am thinking about is maybe, maybe the trail along, Liberty Lake Drive that's adjacent to Trailhead Golf Course as another location. That was just a thought of mine. That's kind of my thought process on that. And if we would like to invite him, to our, August meeting, let me know, and I can get that on the agenda for Jen.
Okay, we'll get to a more detailed discussion on our 2025 projects a little bit later in the agenda. So let's kind of table that thought for now. And if it looks like, we're adding it to the plan, then I think at a future meeting, it would be really nice to have a presentation. So we'll just wait until we get farther down the agenda to go through that. But thanks for checking into it. And it's nice to know that they still can do these type of projects. Appreciate it.
Of course.
All right. Our next agenda item, bicycle rack update. Katie.
Okay, yeah, I did look into some artistic bike racks, and I sent a message to everyone, a couple different websites that I found some interesting ideas, the parkcatalog.com, Dero.com, and they both had some fun, like large, like really large bikes that are painted in bright colors, and then people would lock up their bikes to that giant bike.
Oh,
So that was kind of cool. And then Willie Goat is creative buddy benches, and they have like park benches that are in the shape of animals, like a gorilla or a monkey or something like that is the back part of it. So that's kind of fun for parks. So those are just a couple of fun ideas. So maybe if our commissioners kind of look at those different websites and see if they like those ideas, and then we probably have to figure out how much money we have to spend on those. Because, they're pretty big and special, so they might be like $1,000 to $2,000 for a bike rack. So,
And then what I can work on in the meantime is an inventory of what we have in our parks currently existing. I emailed one of my staff last week and asked, do we have bike racks in our parks? And I got, yes, we do. Well, how many, where do we want more in different locations? So I'll pin down, maybe I'll do like a map and just say, this is where we have bike racks. And then that'll give the commission ideas of, because if you want to customize one and make it artistic, maybe you can do it in the form of Rocky Hill Parks theme or whatever. That might help.
Right. And that has a potential to be on a project list for next year, or potentially I was looking and we have, in our, this year's beautification fund, we have $5,000 in that. And the only thing I am aware of that we spent was the picture frames, which was minimal, and possibly some graffiti barrel paint. So it's possible that, it'd be nice to do something in that line item for this year. So that could be a consideration. So if we had the survey of bike racks from your team by our next meeting, when we finalize our strategic plan, then that would be, well, we don't even need it for that if we spend it this year. So something to think about, and we can talk about this year. I want to make sure we get to the strategic plan because I know David has to leave at a certain time. So I'm tabling a lot of stuff till
Yeah.
August so we can get that strategic plan nailed down, since we'll be
Yeah.
discussing it tomorrow night.
okay. And
Yeah.
I did get the bike friendly community application in by June 25th. It
Nice.
turned out to be like on the computer, 80 pages, which
Oh.
I thought it was like a one pager. So yeah, let's say I put a little time into it. And so anyway, I
Thank
am
you.
really looking at developing a bike pedestrian advisory committee. We talked about that last time.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and maybe have Dan Doon from the city council, since he's a biker, he could be our liaison to the city council.
Mhm.
So anyway, I have a group of people that are actually interested in that, and we can follow the formatting of what Spokane Valley and Spokane does with their advisory committee. So we have a format on what to work on. Also, we have all the documentation from bike-friendly communities. So, and I also found out that the grants that they're awarding, you apply in the fall and they give them to you in the spring.
Okay.
So that I didn't understand that earlier, so, but I'm still on that.
Thanks for filling out an 80-page application.
I know, and yeah, it was quite a learning experience.
That's awesome. And I think the citizen committee I mentioned, and when I did the city council report, that was part of my report, and I saw some heads nodding. I think they're very supportive of getting the community involved in Liberty Lake and what we're doing here. So that's exciting. And I'm glad you can find guidelines so we don't have to reinvent the wheel
Yeah.
and the wheel. No. Okay, anything else on bikes for right now?
That's probably all for right
And
now.
we may get to it again when we get
There's
to-
always more ideas, but you
Yeah.
better move along.
Okay, so we're moving to item 6, our action items. And we'll start out with the pavilion and playground because I think that'll segue into our budget and strategic plan conversation that will be up on the agenda after that. So I think, Jen, you included some things in our packet and you have some information.
Yeah, so a while back, I'd like to, if I go back to Zoom here, introduce Lisa Patrick. She's joining us in the audience this afternoon out of the goodness of her heart. She is a vendor with All Place Systems. I reached out to her and she actually came out and met with city staff a few weeks ago, actually a couple months ago, and sent a proposal. I said, basically, she saw the site. I said, what are our options with our existing budgeted amount for next year and replacing like in kind equipment at Pavilion Park, which is just the play structure itself. And so she sent back the information that you have in your packets. I'm not going to go through it because at this point, the details of it are not quite relevant. What I wanted to achieve was, what are we in for? Are we going to propose a like in kind replacement next year? And what she ended up saying is to the tune of probably a little more than 120,000, probably more realistically like 130 to 140,000. Correct me if I'm wrong, Lisa. Don't be afraid to step in. I wanted a vendor perspective here so that she can help me explain what we need to plan for. So then, of course, those discussions led to, well, what if we change things? What if we add 2 separate play structures with 2 separate age groups? What if we add swings? You know, all of these things. Are we going to go with play chips versus rubber? Could we move the Fallen Heroes course that's currently there, move it elsewhere and put a second play structure set there to cater to some of the other kids? There are a lot of options, and those are a lot of unanswered questions that I can't answer. That needs to be a bigger discussion than staff. That needs to be a discussion, I think, of the Parks and Arts Commission and then a presentation to the council. The thing I will say is if we're going to propose a bigger solution than just a like in kind replacement, we need to have those discussions with council now so that we can budget accordingly and appropriately for next year. However, that being said, we have the comp plan in the works next year. Is it better to give this some time? Not necessarily, I won't say it's being rushed, but budget season is upon us and we're gonna have to know what we're wanting to do moving forward into budget season so that we know how to budget. And I think this could be a bigger discussion with the community potentially, if that's the route we want to take. That those conversations could happen through the comp plan, the parks plan that we're going to be working on next year. So there are a lot of opportunities here for discussion. There are a lot of different directions that we can go. I think it's up to the commission to make a recommendation to the council. And this is going to be a CFP budget item. It already is. There is $120,000 allotted right now in the budget for 2025 to replace. And keep in mind, when the asset management software picks a number to say this is how much it's going to cost to replace it, it's truly like in kind. It's based on industry standards. It's based on absolutely no changes other than what is the value of replacing this thing like in kind. So there are no frills or otherwise. It's replacing it with the most like piece that we can find. Of course, some inflation probably is going to be a factor in that 120,000. But is it an opportunity to make some changes in that park? And then, so I'm going to segue with that conversation. If anybody has questions for Lisa as a vendor, please feel free to ask. She was kind enough to be online today. But I think that conversation will segue into our budget discussion and maybe be part of the bigger conversation with council tomorrow evening. At least begin the conversation with council. What are council's thoughts and desires for next year for that play structure? Or do we go through with the parks plan and comp plan process, potentially gathering information from the community about what they want to see at Pavilion Park? I have fielded a lot of feedback over the years about how come we don't have swings? We'd love swings. How come we don't have this? And we'd love that. So the public is quite voluntarily commentary on that park. And I do think that if you ask them, they would have an opinion. But with an opinion and a desire to do something needs a budget to do anything about that. And I just don't know. As staff, I can go any way I'm directed to go. And I don't know that staff feels confident really making a recommendation. It really doesn't matter to us what the desire is. What matters is what the public wants and what the council wants and what the Parks and Arts Commission wants.
What age group is this plan?
5. Well, right now it's 5 to 12. Lisa, did you, in your proposal, was it a 2 to 5 and a 5 to 12, or was that a?
I don't have it in front of me right now. I'm sorry. I thought we had a 2 to 5 and a 5 to 12 piece there.
Yeah,
And-
and didn't you propose
what
the
those
2 to
numbers are.
5 being
Yeah.
in the Fallen
Up
Heroes
in the-
Yes,
area footprint?
yeah.
So as soon as we take this like and kind replacement and start changing it, meaning if we replace the structure that's there now, it's a 5 to 12 structure. There's not enough room in that footprint to put a 2 to 5 and a 5 to 12 structure.
Correct.
In her proposal, she put the 5 to 12, 5 to 12 structure in the existing footprint. She put the 2 to 5 structure, proposing it go in the Fallen Heroes area. Well, then you open up a whole other world, because we've got to put the Fallen Heroes elsewhere. Requires site prep, curbing, wood chips,
Right.
install, rip out and install. That's a fee in itself.
Somewhere else in Pavilion or just somewhere else?
And then we would need to address, the groups that may feel opposed. That I can see people coming and saying, leave it alone, it's sacred, it's meaningful, it was put there for a purpose. So it's not something we can just go in and change. At least that's my
Right.
opinion as staff. I think we're gonna get some pushback, and we need some conversation with those groups that installed it with the city. Maybe they'll say, oh, great, move it. We don't have any concerns, but if they have concerns, I feel because it's a Fallen Heroes circuit course, we owe it to them to at least hear them and communicate with them. That's a plan, a thought out of courtesy.
Yeah, well, the current structure has play items that are appropriate for 2 to 5 and 5 to 12, with the littler slides and the tunnels,
It's
And-
tagged 5 to 12.
the bigger slide.
It doesn't mean it's built for 2 to 5. Two
The
to
current
5,
structure?
yeah, the current structure, 2 to 5s play on it. They play on it all the time,
All the.
but it is a 5 to 12.
I see.
Mhm.
We're going to use it, which we need to. I think we need to have a structure for 2 to 5. I see so many children of all ages, 2 to 5 especially, but 5 and older, playing on the Fallen Heroes circuit course items, and I don't think they're made for that, and I see them fall and get hurt all the
Yeah.
time.
And both of our other parks have both structures. This is the
Yeah.
only park that does not have both structures, and it's comparable to Orchard, but it is one of our busiest parks.
Yeah, and to give it, I mean, I'm sure we all know this, but to give it any indication of its age, I played on that play structure when I was a kid.
1996 was when that was installed, and so it has seen its life expectancy.
Yeah. So I suppose I'm for having both structures and catering to all the children. I just have no idea where we would put the Fallen Heroes course.
And there's absolutely no room there without moving the Fallen Heroes course. Is that what I'm hearing?
It's pretty tight.
Yes,
Yeah.
the use zone just, you have to have quite a large footprint. And what you have there right now, the use zone is designed for that piece, so there's not any extra space within that footprint. You would have to greatly shrink down the current structure you have there to have any possibility of adding a second structure within that area.
What if we abandon that as the playground site and put it somewhere else at Pavilion Park?
Of course, that's an option. Those are all options and discussions that we would have to have with.
Because there's not that much infrastructure we'd be losing. Right?
The question would
This
be
much.
where as staff, we've talked about, bleeding over to the south side of the sidewalk and potentially adding swings there and making that an extension of the playground in some fashion. We even talked about it with Lisa on site there, and there are a lot then once we decide, okay, hey, yeah, let's grow the playground, let's make it bigger, let's move it, let's do whatever. Who's going to design that? So that's my next question. Next step, who's going to design that? Is that going to be a landscape architect? Lisa, what are the typical processes in your world for that sort of thing?
That's a really good question. For what you asked me to do, which was pretty straightforward, we're not doing, any excavation or that type of thing, changing the site in that way. That's pretty easy for us to handle in-house. But when we start to actually, like if you're going to be tearing up curbing and expanding your footprint, incorporating the hillside, getting more complicated like that, then it really would behoove you to have a landscape architect involved. That's my opinion. And I will tell you, when I was there measuring after you left, when we met, there were quite a few people that came to play and were asking what I was doing, and they were very curious and excited to think about the possibility. I told them not to get too excited. It was just very preliminary and checking things out, but there was definitely public interest while I was just there with the measuring tape. So
Yes, and I agree. I think we have a huge opportunity right here in this particular playground to involve the community. I really do, because I saw what we went through with Orchard Park. The community was incredibly involved in the design and the choices of what went in at Orchard Park. They had meetings and they had an opportunity to weigh in, to share opinions, colors, themes, you name it. And they took a lot of ownership in Orchard Park, and the design came from those voices. And I think that this is an opportunity for the commission and the council to be able to communicate with the citizens on what they're the ones that use it every day. And
I personally think that all our parks should have play equipment for the whole range of age groups. I mean, to me, that's just a given. And that they all need to be within line of sight in case you have, 2 ages of kids and
Right.
you don't want them far apart. And so that creates some footprint problems. But yeah, having the community involved, and who ran those community meetings? How did that look, like? What did that look like for Orchard?
That was our planning department, so I really have no, city staff ran those meetings with the planning department and the landscape architect at the time. Through the build process of the park, so I don't know how something like that works through a project renovation process versus an,
I watched the last council meeting and there was a comment from one of the citizens talking about surveys and getting more people involved. And the citizen was saying that he thought the engagement commission would be a good source of surveying the public and getting their input. So perhaps
and I think
handing
we,
it over to the
yeah,
engagement commission.
that, and I think we're gonna have some opportunity through the parks plan process to gather input on our city parks. If you ever take the time to read the 276 pages that's currently there is a lot of information from local folks and opinions on parks. So I think that process is going to be, and that's what Lisa and I have talked about, that there's an opportunity through that process too, along with community engagement to get some feedback.
Mark, I know you have something to say, but Laura, you've had your hand up for a minute.
Sorry, Mark.
Yeah, I said a couple of quick questions. The comp plan that you mentioned that's in the budget for next year, is that for all parks or just Pavilion Park?
All parks.
Okay, and then my other question was, are there any, I know you're at life on the equipment, is there any concern from a safety perspective of potentially extending that replacement a year or two?
No.
Okay. I am really in favor of, like what you said, just getting the community engagement going, getting feedback. And to your point, Jen, this is a really, really big opportunity that we have to really change the landscape of that park and the play area. And it seems that it wouldn't, we should do our due diligence and really exploring that and seeing what it would lead to.
Well, those are good thoughts, Laura. Mark, you had something, and then Katie.
Yeah, just generally, absolutely using the resources that we have in order to go out and promote certain types of engagement. I just want to clarify and make sure that you're not thinking of the Community Engagement Commission as a body that goes out and plans things. Just to clarify, that would go back through staff. The planning and the programming of any of those things would be staff directed. Of course, we can use the commission to help engage the community and get feedback, and as we have since its creation. But just as you're thinking about this, that would be a staff directed planning and programming effort. So keep that in mind.
I was just concerned about the safety of that Fallen Heroes exercise area, because I've heard that too. So I take my grandkids up there. So that could be a major concern. It would be good if we could talk to the people who, donated that to our community. But if it's a safety concern, it should be moved and be made more safe somewhere else where the little kids can't play on it.
Yeah.
I think ultimately, wherever we put it, kids are gonna be on it. Just maybe not as many.
So do you think we should get rid of it? Or just
I-
put it in an area that's more where adults just access it?
I think the feedback that we've received from throughout the community indicates that that is a popular item and we won't be considering getting rid of it. Whether there are some options to relocate it and maybe have, as to Jen's point, wherever we put it, there's going to be a challenge with keeping folks off of it. But there may be some options for relocating it to a more practical location. Those we'll have to explore.
Yeah.
There have been discussions of potentially, a good location might be, we call it the dog leg of Pavilion Park. It's the section that's unmaintained, south of the park entrance. You're still gonna have kids on it.
Yeah.
But at least it's away from the playground a bit.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Katie,
Yeah.
because I see it in Rocky Hill too. It's adjacent to the playground at Rocky Hill. A sidewalk separates it. And so the bleed over. And if it was a farther distance, yes, you will still have kids on it, but it won't be
And the
bleed over from
there
the-
was a reason why those went in next to a playground. It's so the parents could work out while they're watching their children play. Is the reason they went
Too
in.
far away, then they're out of line of sight.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh,
So there was intent to
Does
put
that
them
really
near the
happen?
playground.
Right. Well, I mean, we'll get to our strategic plan next, so oh, Lisa has,
Our vendor guest.
oh, Lisa, did you have your hand up?
Yes, just one final comment, that, you know, you guys are the Arts Commission as well. We have different manufacturers that we partner with on a variety of athletic and park site furnishings and shade, et cetera. But what I did for the design here was using Playcraft out of Grants Pass, Oregon. But we also have Berliner Rope Play, and they can do some very fun designs and some very aesthetically pleasing, almost artsy types of configurations that would be, what do I want to say, kind of could be regionally attractive or just very, very dynamic and draw some positive attention. And sometimes we can partner, say, a rope structure with something more traditional as well. So you have just a very well-rounded environment. Some things blend, you know, better than others. So, you know, there's a lot of directions you can go. What I provided was probably about a real baseline, that 130 to 140. So there's a lot of directions you can go if you want to continue to develop that out. It looks like it's a really popular park, and Berliner could definitely have some nice design for you there. And it's challenging, and there's a lot of good arguments for rope play and what it does for developing the whole child. So that's a whole nother presentation, but.
Well, it sounds like Lisa, well, first of all, thanks for coming because you've provided
You're welcome.
a starting point of information, which we were in great need of, but it sounds like we're heading down the road of getting community input, and it may push the project out a little bit, and we may, of course, broaden the project. So we'll keep in touch, but we appreciate your input. Commissioners, do you have any other questions for Lisa while she's still online?
how much would it cost for the two projects, like the younger play and the older one together?
I believe that's what I provided in the quote there.
140?
Yeah, I believe I'll have to go back and double check what all was covered, but I think, yeah, I believe that's what was provided there. I'll go back and double check and do a follow-up email with some links to some other options. So I can send that as follow-up to the meeting.
And again, my thought on this is a 20-year project, if not more. And what decisions we make, we're gonna have this playground for 20 more years, another 20 years. So
Good point.
an opportunity to really make an impact. And once you do it, you don't want to go in and change it. Right. So it is a big deal.
I'm happy to be a resource, and thank you for inviting me to participate.
Thank you, Lisa.
Well, thanks again. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, Lisa.
Bye-bye.
Okay, got it. All right, well, that'll give us some information as we go into our budget and strategic plan discussion. Before we really jump into that, shall we talk about the fee structure before I forget completely about it? Sure. You want to come up and tell us what Mikhail, and tell us your latest research and where it led you?
All right, so last time I was asked to look at the difference between practices and games for the fees for the fields. So I did a little bit of research, looked into regionally Little Leagues, adult slow pitch softball, and Spokane girls softball, and there were some average times on their websites and when I talked to people. So most practice for an hour to an hour and a half, where their games range from an hour to 2 hours and 25 minutes, or 2 hours and 15 minutes. Then I looked regionally what people are charging for those hourly rates. So that's all in that packet. Spokane Valley, for example, is $15 to $26 an hour, Spokane 19 to 37, and then so on. And then some places do larger amounts. Just Coeur d'Alene, for example, does, so either you can rent it for 7 hours or rent it for 14 hours. So I looked at that and then updated my suggestion for fees for base it on more on that hourly rate. And then the reason I was bringing up fees is just trying to get more in line with covering costs of our staff time. And so if you look on that second page, it says proposed fees 2024, then 2025 option A, option B. So I broke it down into 2 different options as well, like we discussed last time. So 15 per hour for ball fields was option A with a minimum of 2 hours. So kind of forcing them to do the minimum of 2 hours, which then covers our staffing time, or then the option B, which would be just $30 an hour. And then that just no minimum amount of time. And then that 30 would cover the staffing time. And then a suggestion of a $40 application fee, and that kind of brought the price down as well and made it more manageable with what it is in the region, where they would just pay a $40 processing fee of all the fields that they're processing. So I don't know if you guys had time to look through the different options, and if you had any questions, and if hopefully that answered the practice versus game information that was requested last time.
Well, I love that you've broken that out. Just, you did provide the option A and B. Do you have a preference that you think would work best?
I do not. I would probably, just off the top of my head, lean towards the more that option A, trying to keep that price a little bit lower for these youth teams that are coming in, especially most of the ones I've seen use our field so far are the nonprofit groups, Little League, softball teams and things like that. So I think if you force the 2 minimum hour one, then every hour after that they use it's at a lower rate to keep it more affordable for them.
Are they able to reserve for a season? I was just thinking from a nonprofit standpoint, a $40 administrative fee for each application seems like it might become cost prohibitive.
Yeah, so they can reserve. So currently, for example, our Little League has reserved, the regional Little League is reserved from spring through fall. So they did all their reservations on one application. So I would just say continue doing that. And that's the reason why I kind of suggested that application fee. It keeps the hourly rate a little bit lower, but then covers some of that administrative side, and they can just do one large application instead of making the little hourly rate higher.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioners, any questions on his recommendation on that page 2? That's the blue heading for the ball fields, and then below the sports fields.
I was wondering, is option B that you have here, is that more close to the actual cost recovery, I guess, for your actual expense?
So they're both pretty close. So with the fields and reservations in general, the hard thing is if it's a 1 hour reservation versus a 5 hour reservation is roughly the same cost. So with that option A, at least keeps each hourly rate after the a little bit lower, but it does cover the cost of our staffing.
So we're being asked to approve either option A or B on that if we don't have any changes.
Or leave it the same,
Or-
whatever
Yeah.
you just.
And so if you look on the 3rd page with all the yellow highlights,
Yes.
you can see what it is currently option A, option
Oh,
B.
I see.
And this is the document that you'll make the recommendation to council in the budget documents to move forward with. So your decision as the commission will be, are you going to recommend to the council to approve 2024 fees, option A or option B as next year's fees?
I see.
So this is the draft form once and that decision does not need to be made tonight. That can be made in the August meeting. We generally have the commission vote to approve a draft fee schedule to move forward to council through the budget process for their approval. So, and by the August meeting, let's say, that would be the time for the commission to come together and vote on which of these they would like to
Okay.
recommend to the council for approval.
All
and
right.
will require a vote.
Okay, thanks for the clarification. So on the fee schedule, that's with the small writing in the yellow. Is there any questions on the comparison of what are 2024 fees to the 2025 option A or B in any categories, understanding that our next meeting, we're gonna have to vote on something?
Were there any significant swings in pricing? It looked, I didn't do a line by line, but it looked fairly comparable to the 2024, the current fee structure. But the significant change being a block reservation versus an hourly reservation. Am I understanding that correctly?
Sorry, missed that first part of the question. Could you repeat that?
It didn't look like there was a significant cost increase. I didn't go line by line, but it looked like the main difference was reservation and a block, a time block versus an hourly reservation.
Yes.
Is that correct? Or were there adjustments?
That's the main one for the park reservations, was changing it to a block for trying to cover all the cost of the reservations. Currently they're in that hourly rate. And so I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it was close to about $120 it costed our staff to do a reservation. And so keep putting in that block rate kind of keeps it very similar to what we're charging now hourly, but just kind of forces the 4-hour reservation, which is pretty typical regionally. For example, Spokane Valley, it's minimum, you have to do 3 hours there.
Thank you. I get where it is, and I think it makes a lot of sense. Like you're saying, when you look at what the typical reservation is, I'm just, when you look at it side by side and you see, oh, it was $25 and now it's $100. Just really making sure that we're focusing on the price isn't necessarily increasing. It's just the method or the way that we're doing the reservations.
Correct. It's just once again, not the right wording, but it's kind of forcing you to do that 4-hour reservation in order to cover the cost, instead of doing an exorbitant, a lot higher hourly rate and to try and cover that cost. Instead of doing like $100 an hour, we're forcing you to do the 4 hours, which on average, I think I said last time we do 3.5 hours of reservations anyways on average. So it's right there, pretty close. It's just to restructure it to make it simpler and make sure we're covering those costs.
That makes sense. Is there also on those reservations a $40 fee, processing fee on top of that?
There is not. So it's just a lot harder with the ball fields because they have so many more and a lot of smaller ones. Whereas so usually with the park reservations, just one reservation, whereas the ball fields can be anywhere between 5 to 50 reservations.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, commissioners? I just had one. I know we talked about last time to make the fields and the structures available to the maximum number of people. And by putting it in the blocks, do you think it allows for a more efficient use where you could have 2 events booked in the same day kind of thing? Or
So with the ball fields, I don't think so. Ball fields are just hard in general. I think it's just how our guidelines are set is what will open up more availability and to the public. So I don't think the fee is going to have too much effect on that. It's how we do the reservation process.
okay. Oh, we have some decisions to make next time. Are there any other questions? Okay. Well, let's move on to our next agenda item. Thank you for that. And we appreciate the extra research that provides a lot of clarification. I thank you. Moving on to our strategic plan, in preparation for our workshop tomorrow with council, we will be presenting our strategic plan. And based on what we discussed at our last meeting, Jen has put together a draft of that plan. So if you can turn to, it's near the end of your packet, the Public Art 2020, what should be 4 through 2027, I guess.
And if I may really quick, what I'm going to do is keep a list of topics that the commission voices this evening that they would like to bring up for discussion with the council tomorrow. So in a sense, it'll be a draft agenda and a very informal draft agenda. So as you are having discussion tonight, if there are key points that you don't want to forget to bring up with council tomorrow, let me know that's a key point and I will write it down. Otherwise, I will just do my best to interpret this conversation and
Okay.
print that out for everybody tomorrow.
Okay. So just as a refresher, starting with the 2024, I mean, we have the Liberty Lake Together art, which we'll be discussing more at our next meeting because no one responded to the call of artists. The utility box wraps is already postponed till next year because the DOT has not released those boxes. The beautification, as I mentioned earlier in the meeting, we have spent very little out of that. I don't think we have to worry about deciding what that project is tonight unless we have extra time, but that's something to be thinking about of how we might use that funds before the end of the year. The Trailhead Beam project, we don't have a dollar amount associated with that, and potentially we'd like the library to use it because we haven't thought of anything. So that's on hold, and the symphony is, of course, a placeholder because the city is partnering with that. So that's kind of our 2024 look. Unfortunately, our big project is the one that's kind of stalled, but we'll keep talking about it and decide what we want to do. So based on some of the feedback from our last meeting and from our strategic plan from the year before, which also include 2025, you can see the items that we have on here. Obviously, 2025 is what we need to work on the most. We already know there's going to be some potential bleed over to 2026. We can look at that. And then 2027 is going to be more placeholders of just our typical categories that we have. So we already have the Kramer Parkway as tentative from 2024, but I don't really know, Laura, do you think that we're to that point?
We're edging towards it because we didn't have any proposals to choose from. I'd say if we had received some proposals that we'd probably still be on track for this year, but it's going to make it more challenging not having any proposals submitted.
If that said, I know, and maybe this is a technical question, so Mark, I might need your opinion, but if we can't get anyone on the call to artists for the 2024 Kramer Parkway project, our little sculpture in the triangle, and we have that 32,500, it's under the Liberty Lake Together art. Could we pivot and try to do something else with that if we could get it done this year? Or we could say, call uncle basically that we can't get it done this year and have that money transferred to next year's with still being able to possibly do another project too, or because I don't like to lose a project for this year. You see what I'm...
Sure. So Jen, correct me if I'm wrong. All of these funds are located in the Public Art Fund, yes? So yeah, it would be completely up to the commission's recommendation as to how you wanted to rearrange those. Of course, council would be in the position of approving the budget,
Yes.
but the commission would be free to propose and recommend reallocations based on the availability of artists for any given project.
Okay.
And I'll add, we don't carry over line items that go unused unless we're in the middle of a project. So if we're in the middle of a project, it isn't going to get completed and build out to the next year. Then we go through the budget process and carry that over, if you will. If we have a line item like the Kramer Park art that doesn't get used whatsoever in this year, we rebudget for the next budget year.
But we could kind of double down and do two projects theoretically.
Yeah, I mean, as long as we can present that to council.
Right.
And of course, it's. up to
Yeah,
them.
everything's subject to council
Yeah.
approval. Yeah, okay. All right, well, that helps me a little bit. So, and I know David said the story walk is a possibility. I can't remember the budget on that, but that's a possibility. Our beautification, which is typically our smaller projects, which, could end up being a bike rack or benches like we talked about. The Smarty board, do we want to do one of those? Do we want to do two of those? There's the rock art, which in your packet, Laura provided some pictures of some of the rock art that she's seen in some of her travels. And then, we have the placeholder of the playground, but realistically, from what I think I'm hearing is if we're going to get community input and there's the comp plan, that might end up being a 2026 project. Is
That's
that
what,
accurate?
that's what I'm hearing as well.
Would you agree with that, Mark? Given a community input project and,
I mean, it's certainly feasible that if you wanted to make that recommendation based on the input that or based on the discussion that you've had here, that is certainly a viable option. I don't want to give you the impression that you're filtering those potential recommendations.
yeah,
to
I'm
me,
just
but
trying to think of what a realistic timeline would be.
Yes, it
Because
could
I mean,
be.
how long does
Easily
it
could
take to
be.
get community input? That's a 6-month process?
For something like that, you would want to make sure that you had a wide enough window where you could get enough to be meaningful. So probably.
Yeah, so that, I mean, I just trying to get an idea of the timeline, I
Yeah.
guess. Not to put you on the spot. So that's kind of what the placeholders are. So this is the time for commissioners to say, hey, this is what I think we should do for next year. What should we put on the table for a discussion for a project, whether it's 2025, 26, 27? This is your show. How do you see this playing out based on discussion and any feedback you've had from everywhere? We can gather some ideas, things that we want to talk about with the council tomorrow to kind of use them as a sounding board and see, you know, what their feelings are or their thoughts. But I'd like to have some ideas so that we don't have to think of them tomorrow and while we're in the workshop. And you can also see, excuse me, there's the projects that have been on discussion before on that next page, just.
Yeah,
Not
those,
that those are ever, these are just casually mentioned kind of stuff.
those, if any of them are of interest to the commission, those would be great talking points for tomorrow.
Yeah.
I really like the flagpole for Town Square. I brought that up before, and perhaps, because I know we were waiting on the master plan for the Town Square, but that's, I guess, something to be maybe possibly brought up again and.
Yeah, and that master plan discussion and begins in fall.
So we are in the process of probably reconsidering that schedule based on some of the tasks that are going to be done as part of the comprehensive planning process. And so taking advantage of some of those already pre-programmed things. And so that project itself, the master planning for Town Square may slide into that process associated with the comp plan master parks update.
Okay, so.
But a final decision on that hasn't been made yet. That's why I'm being a little bit hedging.
So I mean, I guess in the short plan, we don't have a master plan, so we don't know where a flagpole might go.
Yeah.
So yes.
I was wondering, are we still considering putting in a splash pad at Rocky Hill Park? Is that
Other
still,
than it being on the CFP in the past, there has been zero discussion about that.
And that's our only park that doesn't have one.
yeah, I mean, don't you think that's kind of important?
So
I-
that's currently an item that's on what's called the unfunded projects list. So if that's a priority that the commission wanted to consider, that's certainly something that you could bring to council's attention as a higher priority that they may want to consider moving from unfunded to funded.
I think we should start making a list.
Yeah,
So,
I think.
John, I think we should put the flagpole on the list to be discussed in conjunction with the master plan of Town Hall Square, just so it's on the list and in people's mind.
And then there's that topic that we've brought up before of the dog park that location, but
I'm printing the unfunded list. I should have added this to the packet. I apologize. I'm gonna print this. Mikkel, or would you mind grabbing them off the printer?
I got it. Yeah.
And hand them out and
This is the council's unfunded list.
this is the council. So this is a great time to discuss any.
Absolutely.
That's what I meant when I was referring to
Okay.
this.
So,
Council's list of unfunded.
So if it's related to the parks, we should be talking about it, the unfunded list.
yes, I
Okay.
agree.
And then asking them, are there any other ideas, council, that you have that we could be a part of?
Right.
One thing that's important to me when we talk to the council is we have a lot of ideas and you look at these projects under discussion. We need the city to buy land. Because, for example, when I was on the little committee about looking at a dog park, we don't have any land.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
So for those of you online, I pulled up the unfunded list and I'll re-email that out again as well.
Dog park.
And one of the things you may want to use to help inform this discussion is, if you'll recall, we had a survey that was asking the community to kind of rank their priorities on this unfunded list. And that may be something helpful for you as well, just to see what, and as I recall, the pool was on top, a community center was second, followed by everything else in some order that I don't recall.
Right.
I can pull it up though and help you.
Good looking a lifeguard. There's a
Right,
life.
right.
Do we have an idea when the library will move over to the church building?
Tune in on Tuesday night. So we're proposing a project management services agreement to manage that project at the council meeting.
Are you able to share the time frame that's being proposed or no?
So it's hard to say with any degree of certainty, because part of what we're going to ask the project management firm to do is help us to establish that schedule.
I was just thinking if there's any opportunities when we look at, you know, we talked about bike racks and benches and even the rock art, if there's any possibility of incorporating that into the library area as well, or I guess opportunities to further explore that, and if that's something that our commission would look at, and then knowing where to potentially allocate those projects in the 5-year plan.
So there's certainly that opportunity, Laura, and I will say that just from a frame of reference, the Legacy Church that's the current tenant, their lease expires in April of 2025. So we wouldn't, regardless of what planning and design work we do, we wouldn't be able to go in and actually start making construction changes until, say, May of 2025. So if you're looking at it from a big picture, that's kind of the general timeline. And then however long that process would take, several months. So you're looking at 2025 for those kinds of things, if you're incorporating them into construction potentially.
Thank you. Nancy, I'm not sure if that's something that we want to consider as potential projects.
With the library and
Yeah, it's been a long goal of this commission, in our strategic plan is being involved in some of those things up front. I know ideally, and it hasn't come to fruition, is that any of those type projects have a small percentage of the budget that's allocated for, I don't want to say art necessarily, but enhancements and beautification, or practical art, so to speak, like the bench or the bike rack, where if it's something that's being put in already, and that might be part of what the project management team starts looking at, is that instead of just buying a standard bike rack that we look at, could it be a butterfly or a book, something has art, some artistic value to it, but is also functional for what they need it to be. So,
right. I hear what you're saying, though, like a portion of the construction of the library budget would be for some kind of functional public art or some just art.
And I think as we look at our document and what the long-term plan is, it'd be good to get council's input on that piece of it as well. Kind of, we've tried to carve out and identify what our role is, and being able to look at the unfunded projects and make recommendations as a commission. I don't know if moving forward, and maybe it's not even practical at this junction to be able to say that 1% of the budget or whatever that is, but just if that is a longer term goal of council for this commission, and what that might look like.
Right, because for example, that didn't happen at all at Trailhead.
Correct. Yeah. And it is
Ended
what
up-
it is. It's fine. But if that is a goal of the commission or even a goal of council, what does that look like and how do we do it? And, the library moving, again, if it's something that they're going to be purchasing anyways, can it be functional arts, or something that would go with it? And do we want to put that as part of our 5-year plan or recommendation, whether it be in 2025 as part of the construction or 2026, once the building is occupied, that we look at, because they have that beautiful little reading garden now.
Right.
Is that something that they want to replicate in the new space? And is that something that we could say, hey, let's put that into our budget and we can help make that happen? Or if the library is kind of a separate entity, and, I know they have the Friends of the Library, and what that looks like and how we can work together on something like that. So I just think it's another, as we look at our list of projects, it's another opportunity that, to work with those groups on the front end during the construction and after they occupy the space, and seeing if there's anything as a commission that we can recommend or kind of help put into place for them.
Right. And Laura, remind me on the Boulder project that you sent us the examples of, did you have an idea of where something like that might go?
Well, when we first talked about it, and this would have been, I think it was 2018 or 19, we talked about Pavilion Park, but I think even then, and Jen, correct me if I'm wrong, we knew that the play structure replacement was going to be, in the near future. And so we never really solidified a plan or a location. And at the time there was I want to say like a sand pit there, that when the irrigation got redone, got covered up. But that's another thing, maybe near the library or a different location. And when I've talked to people trying to get quotes on it, it's really difficult because we don't have a plan. So getting a quote on how much does it cost to put into place, and then to have an artist come do something with it, it just depends on what we want it to look like. So, I know I said I would try to get numbers, and that was the difficulty that I had, is that we don't have a plan yet. And so it's hard to give a number. I mean, the rough estimate was still in that $20,000 to $30,000 range, depending on the size of rocks. And if we need to buy them, or if the city, if we have it just from construction within the city limits, that they're available and would just need to be moved. There's just a lot of variables that would go into it. So I wasn't able to really get a good firm number to put as a placeholder. But if we're looking, 20, I think I saw it as 2026 potentially, that gives us a little time to pick a location and solidify a design of what we would want.
Did you see that as decorative, or something that you would interact with, like kids would climb on it, or people
I
would?
think it'd be nice to have it be interactive. I was at Rocky Hill the other day, and those flowers weren't designed to be interactive, but they sure are. There's always kids looking at them and climbing on them, and so I think it would be nice to design it to be something that's interactive.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What does everybody else think about the project list that we had on here, and then the unfunded projects that the council has on their list? And we've written down the splash pad and the dog park as part of conversations.
I keep coming back to the dog park and this area of land, undeveloped land east of Ridgeline between Country Vista and Kramer. I'm pretty sure is privately owned, where we just put the new Public Works building, that
Oh.
little section.
In the corner where they ride the motorcycles?
Yeah. We don't have any kind of green space, park, natural outdoor space in that area of Liberty Lake yet, and we need one.
Mhm.
So at least if we could find a way to put a dog park there, it's not a full-blown park, but it's outdoor space.
I think
know
if it's
that's-
privately owned though, we're at the mercy of the property owners.
Isn't that where they were gonna build the apartments? Cause
I don't know. I think so, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So, just as a point to consider, if you'll recall the discussion that council had on the swimming pool, project, when they moved that from the unfunded list to the funded list, what they did is they moved it to the funded list as a siting project or phase. So that would be what is required for anything requiring property acquisition. In this case, probably a dog park. And so whether it turns out to be a decision to use property that the city already owns or having to acquire property, that would be what a siting exercise would result in, is that decision. And so any of those projects on that list that would require acquisition or property to do something would go through some kind of siting.
Okay, I'm not even entirely sure that that whole property is privately owned.
I'm not sure.
I think it is. Amy Muirlyle mentioned that it was.
We'd have to look. I'm not positive off the top of my head, but
Somehow we were able to put the Public Works building over there.
That was an agreement with Central Valley School District because
Oh.
they originally owned that property.
Got it.
So
I'm pretty.
Yeah, I
Go
need to jump off. I've got to be at my class shortly. So, you know, I think as far as the projects go, I'm going to leave it up to you guys. Most know where I stand. I think I'm on the same page with you and Laura as far as some of the projects that we've discussed. I would like to have the story walk on for next year. I think we budgeted $4,000 or $5,000 for that last year, although we got $2,500, I believe, from Kiwanis, or $2,000, I can't recall. But I'm going to be late if I don't leave. I apologize for having to leave. But feel free to email me if you need input or anything.
Okay, all right. Thank you,
Thanks,
David.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Okay.
I was gonna mention too, what about developing the pedestrian bike safety master plan for Liberty Lake? It's, it's not a specific park or anything, but it would probably go under our jurisdiction. And then is Liberty Lake gonna have a public works director, like an engineer type person?
so our new public works director starts on August the 12th, I believe is the date. So yeah, we're just waiting for him to finish
Okay.
his military commission.
Okay, so that would probably be our advisor on that type of plan,
Mhm.
Yes.
right?
But we can add it to the list, absolutely.
So I think that's really, after doing this whole bike-friendly community application, that was one of their number one recommendations. That we develop an advisory committee and get that master plan for bike and pedestrian safety in our community. So I would recommend that.
Okay. Get that on the list. Do we want to put a dollar figure on that?
See,
For
that's-
25, or do we
Yeah.
want that ongoing year to year? But how do you want to see that on the strategic plan document?
Oh, yeah, we have to fill up there.
Yeah, because I need to take all this and somehow
Right.
put it on paper.
So if I can.
What would you suggest?
So I would hesitate to put a dollar figure right now. What I would say is we already have a streets and paths master plan effort underway. I would propose that we may want to consider merging those two efforts because it would be easy to gain some economy by having whoever we hire to undertake the master planning effort for our streets to include a bicycle plan.
Mhm.
Right.
Whereas doing it after the fact would be more
Yeah,
expensive
I
and
guess,
not
yeah.
aligned with the result. So that's something we can definitely look at. And that will be a project that Ben Turner is his name, as the new Public Works Director, will be, that'll be high on his list of things to do when he arrives.
That sounds good.
Yeah, no, that sounds really good. So maybe that wouldn't be on our 2025 other than the coordinated effort with Public Works on
Yeah.
developing that.
Yeah, I would say give us some time to kind of figure that out as he arrives. And it's very possible that some recommendations through that planning effort then become budget items for the commission in the future.
Right.
But give us some time to kind of figure that relationship out, and then we can
Right.
report back.
And then the bike, if we have this advisory committee, we could do some research while you're developing that plan, like we'll have bikers going, on the different streets and have some recommendations,
Sure.
that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it sounds like what we have so far is potentially next year for a potential carryover of our this year's Liberty Lake Together art to also become part one of two parts next year. And then we should be able to do the utility box wraps next year when the DOT, so that can stand. And then we'll have our standard beautification. The trailhead art wall, that's not there. Story walk would be next year.
Yeah, I can go back and if you'd like, what I can do is pencil in the amount that we had on past
Yeah.
strategic plans. I think David was right. It was around 5,000.
That's what I was
But
thinking.
we never hit 5,000.
But that is because Kiwanis paid.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they might do that again too. And then a Smarty board, 1 or 2, we had talked about that in another meeting. But we haven't narrowed down what our big Liberty Lake Together art project would be yet, or what any programming would be. I mean, on the unfunded projects for council, the message board, I don't know that we're there yet. Obviously, community center is not really, could be us, but dog park, we could talk about that with council. Enhancement of Fallen Heroes Circuit course in Orchard Park. There isn't one there. And we ran out of branches of the military. Space Force.
Oh.
Ooh. Well, I mean, that's a possibility we could discuss and glean interest, and there's people that have worked on that before. Bobby Weiss took the lead on all those courses. Community gardens, we don't have those. Parking lot. Splash pad, I think we already have that on, but we'll talk about that with council. Town square, I mean, we're waiting on the master plan. The bike lanes, we're waiting on Public Works. We really haven't had any discussion on disc golf. There is the one course, if you're not aware, behind the
Pavilion
Yeah.
Park behind the shelter. There's a disc golf.
I don't have any idea how much that's used, is it?
There is a dedicated following to that. It is small. I think it's 2 or 3
holes?
holes,
I
yeah.
don't know what they call them. And I don't know, we need land. Restroom facilities at the Arboretum. Have we had people requesting that?
Lions Club.
Lions Club. Gazebos, that's all Lions Club stuff on that master plan, and we don't have a timeline on that master plan. And right now, Lions Club is working on the pavers and the picnic tables. They've kind of taken the lead on that. And new baseball fields, well, that's land.
So are there any specific points that you want me to mark down to be discussed off this unfunded list? I will print this for tomorrow night, so you have it in front of you. Or would you prefer just to have conversation on how it goes based off this entire list?
Well, I think if we have all the lists in front of us.
Then just go with that.
Probably, because,
So for tomorrow night, I'm thinking I'll print the existing strategic plan in draft form that's in front of you.
right.
I'll print the unfunded project list. I'll print the survey results. I haven't looked at them yet. Are they printable? Like,
Yeah, it's in a one-page printable format.
okay, I'll print the survey, community survey results. And, is there anything else?
The community survey results, what is that? Is that on the strategic plan or?
That's specifically on the list of unfunded projects.
Oh,
So it'll help you better, as you're looking at the list of unfunded projects, seeing where the community ranked them in their order of priority.
okay.
Is that like a one-page kind of thing?
Yeah, it is. I just
Okay.
pulled it up. I'm printing it for you.
And maybe, is there any way you can pull that page out and email it to us so we can look at
Yes.
it before the workshop? And then, we have our Boulder project. And we mentioned the flagpole at Town Square eventually when the master plan. I think we want to remind council that we want to be involved in that master plan process. And then that we can segue also into being involved in the library and the art budget and. The programming is something that we've had on our strategic plans, but I think I looked back and I was really unsure what the programming really means. It says in our kind of mission statement thing, programming, community theater, civic theater, literacy, dance, and other.
So Nancy, I can provide a little light on that. So when we developed the document initially, the commissioners that were in place at the time had a desire to start branching out into exploring and including more programming opportunities for the community versus primarily, our focus has been art heavy. And since it is parks and arts, there was a desire to start looking into programming opportunities. We haven't done really any legwork on that. And I think this year, I don't know if it was this year or last year was the first year that was even included in there. And I know, we've kind of branched out in terms of supporting recommendation or supporting groups that have come forth for council to approve for programming in the park. But in terms of branching out and us being responsible for organizing like a dance or a theater type opportunity, that just has not come to fruition at this point. And I don't know that there were really ever any specific goals or ideas. It was more of just a desire to branch out into that area a little more and start digging into it, but nobody's really taken the lead on moving that forward.
Do we need to potentially revise how we lay out our strategic plan and maybe eliminate programming and put some additional money into beautification or create a new category? What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think there's value in having the programming, but I think we just haven't at this point had a driver looking into it because, if you look at like, the movies in the park or Shakespeare in the park, those are all programming type opportunities that are just provided by other organizations. So it's just a matter of, are there other things that we want to look at as a commission and doing? It's just hard because the parks are already heavily utilized. So outside of the programming that's already contracted through the city, I just don't know. So we can discuss, is that something to remove or is it something that there's a strong desire to support and try to push forward?
Right. Okay.
And that may be a good conversation topic with council as well as, if there's a desire from that side, or I'd be curious to see what the, the results of the public survey, if any of the desires included a programming element.
I will say, at the council retreat last week, there was a comment, in our discussion from one council member about potentially someday having a signature event in the community. So in my opinion, that falls perfectly into programming some kind of a signature event. That was one council member. I'm not saying that's the route to take, but that could be an example.
What type of signature event? Because we have
There was no elaboration. on-
Okay, I was like, we have the symphony and barefoot and
Yes, something bigger than that. They use the example of Hoop Fest as a signature event for Spokane.
okay.
So like a Liberty like fun run or a
My
golf cart
thought
race.
went directly to that, that's kind of symphony. And currently, that's what symphony is, and that's what barefoot is, but
Oh, mhm.
maybe they could be made bigger and considered signature events if they were bigger. I don't know. I'm just sharing the information.
Well, I know that when we did the full court basketball murals in the double courts at Pavilion Park, in my head, I thought we would be able to attract some kind of summer little clinic for our youth to go out there with maybe some college kids or some Hoop Fest people or something and have a little, day camp out there and do some things like that. I know the Skyhawks offer a lot of different little kids options, but it might be fun to have a couple city sponsored events like that.
I think that's a really interesting idea, Nancy, because now with the NIL type things in place, it's possible to pay, right? To pay a collegiate athlete to come out and do that. And if it's a city funded, where it's come meet your favorite Zags or Eastern player, or being able to find a couple of those individuals that are willing to, I mean, obviously pay, but use their time to come to a community type event and a meet and greet and clinic, like you said, that's I think a very interesting, especially with that Hooptown court being in place. I think that's something that would be neat to explore.
Well, and then a couple of years ago when we rearranged the 4th of July, I think the closest thing we've ever come to a community signature type event is when we had the fireworks that wrapped up the symphony, and during the day we had a scaled down version of Barefoot. So, and that was all in one day, and that was very successful. And it was a hit to have the fireworks after the symphony and
And programming, Katie, it comes to mind that you said you'd been involved in some bike safety things and helmet giveaways. I mean, wouldn't something like that fall under programming?
Yeah, one concept is called traffic garden, and that's where you chalk out on a blacktop area like a mini version of a street, and little kids practice stopping at stop signs and how to make a turn and signal and that kind of like a bike safety rodeo, but they actually have different plans online that you can do these traffic gardens. So
that would be a good addition to Barefoot in the Park.
yeah,
I love
it
that
looks
idea.
like a really fun thing to do. And they have different formats online that you can kind of copy how to do it and everything. They do it in Seattle and Portland and different areas. Sometimes they use the parking lots of elementary schools and that kind of thing for their blacktop area.
Yeah.
I think that's another interesting programming opportunity where if we're using some of our budget, whether it's helmets or some other bike related item, that if they come and, graduate from their safety course, that there's a giveaway. And I don't know, Jen, that seems like that would fall under programming. It doesn't necessarily have to be a big event to fall under that line item.
Yeah, and you can give away things that are meaningful, like reflective stickers that they put on their bikes or bike helmets, bike locks.
The only thing I need to follow up on
Lights.
is what we can give away. There's a fine line there with city giving away items, so I'd have to defer to finance on that one.
Well,
Yeah.
if we can't, we might be able to find a sponsor for the helmets or something, if that was what we want to
Yeah.
do.
And Bike Swap is another avenue where you can ask for grants for different community events related to bike safety, which I've been involved in, so I
Right.
can help with that.
Well, I mean, if we want to keep programming, we could look at maybe a couple little things like that for next year to get into it a little bit and come up with some kind of a dollar amount associated with it and move forward. So I'm just looking at the survey and, well, and this is in ranked order, the pool, the senior center, town square, protected bike lanes, the Rocky Hill Park, splash pad, disc golf, dog park, expanded parking lot at Rocky Hill, Orchard Park, add community gardens, Arboretum, add restrooms, Orchard Park Fallen Heroes course, more baseball fields, and the River District Community Message Board. So looks like that's the top 13. Is that, does anybody know on the survey, was there more that were, you only did 13, or that was the only ones that were talked about?
So this was a ranking of the existing items on the unfunded
Oh,
projects
right,
list.
you
Yeah.
said that, got it.
Yeah, so it didn't have any opportunity to like suggest new projects or anything
Uh-huh.
like that,
Okay.
which is a different process that would need to be discussed at some
Right.
point.
Okay, I understand. So we kind of know what the priorities are and what we're able right now to manage. I mean, obviously, we're not building a senior center next year, I don't think so. We need land. That keeps coming up. So what other projects are you interested in that aren't on any of these lists that are in your head that you think would be something that would have value to discuss? Okay.
Are we doing any outdoor, like those dance classes? I think about a year ago, they did them at Pavilion Park on the,
Yes,
Sure.
she's got classes
she's still doing that.
and yoga as well.
It's just at Pavilion Park.
I believe the yoga is at Rocky Hill. The Satori dance classes are at Pavilion Park.
I wonder if it's under the shelter, right?
Yes.
Yeah. You could possibly provide some like sport court flooring for that, maybe. You know, for the dance classes, so there'd be more supportive flooring under the pavilion. If you wanted to do those.
I wonder why we haven't brought Shakespeare in the Park Pavilion. It is a pavilion. It is a pavilion. Shakespeare?
Shakespeare's at Pavilion. Yeah, it's been for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
It's every August. We do Shakespeare in the park.
I mean, like more than once a year.
No, it's a one time. So we work with Montana Shakespeare in the Parks. And they're a traveling Shakespeare group that goes around the region. And so there's they come to Liberty Lake one weekend in August.
And I think they hit up Spokane, don't they, as well?
They don't anymore. They only did 1 year in Spokane. They are in Sandpoint now. So we're still the only Washington venue that they do.
So that's just the traveling schedule then.
Would we be able to host any other more plays in the park?
It's a matter of finding who, what, how, yeah, I'm sure that that would be doable, but I haven't had anybody reach out to me, so I don't know who the groups would be to reach out to, but.
Well, Mark, while we're thinking about some of this, since this is many of us's first workshop with council, can you tell us a little bit about what to expect tomorrow and how that hour might go?
Sure. And so I don't know that because it's the first one, I don't know that there's any precedent to kind of define the cadence and the pace and the back and forth. But my recommendation is is, like we talked about before, I think the goal of the hour is to make sure that you maximize the time to be able to, as briefly but as meaningfully as you can, talk about the achievements over the last year, and then talk about, as you've been discussing tonight, your plans for the future, however far in the future you want to target, so that council has a good idea of what they're going to see when the budget eventually gets presented to them, and has a comfort level that those things have been vetted, you've discussed them, you've gone through planning, and that is your, your best effort toward an achievable plan. And then the dialogue will kind of, I think, unfold as it unfolds. There, different people will have different questions coming from different perspectives, so you need to be ready to kind of address those questions. But my advice would be to spend as little time as possible looking backwards and as much time as possible looking forward.
Yeah, and I think through our reports, they're pretty familiar with what we've done
Agreed.
so far.
Yeah.
So we'll just kind of almost start out with next year and the vision as we go forward.
I think keeping in mind that hour will go quickly.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing how fast it goes.
Yeah.
Commissioners, what about our Liberty Lake Together art? I mean, this year it's the Kramer Parkway Triangle. If we keep the Liberty Lake Together art on our strategic plan, which it's nice. I mean, those are generally art projects based on the logo, right, Laura? And the theme of Liberty Lake pulling together.
Yes, that's where it originated from.
So if we continue those projects, what would you see as our Liberty Lake Together project for next year? Because if we had an idea of that, I think it would benefit us as we go into the council meeting tomorrow.
We had discussed looking at branching out into either a roundabout or a median. Nothing was ever finalized or selected, but those were kind of the next target areas. And I don't know, Jen, are there DOT restrictions on any of the roundabouts?
On Harvard, yes. The rest are owned by the city.
Yeah, because we did talk about the new roundabout on Mission and Kramer Parkway.
Yes, because there's no landscaping in there yet, correct?
Correct.
But
Yeah,
there is a
so
budget for landscaping.
No,
No.
hopefully.
Yeah, we had targeted, I thought we had targeted that one. That's the one I wasn't sure if there was a DOT restriction on, because the Harvard one is well landscaped and established.
So DOT owns that Harvard roundabout. We maintain it. We own and maintain all of the rest of the roundabouts. The question I have, and I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this, is I think the Kramer Mission roundabout is not under the same restrictions as the bridge and the Kramer Corner and the utility boxes. Not the Kramer Corner, but the utility boxes. I'd have to double check with Lisa, because I think we were free to landscape that this year, but there was no budget for it.
But if nothing else, it would be released next year.
Yeah,
If it was.
if it was, yes. So we could say next year would be the year to landscape it and or
Look at artwork.
yeah,
Right?
yes. And keeping in mind, we do have a flag in the Mission Walter Roundabout. We do not have a flag. Trying to remember if there's a flag on Harvest Parkway. So flags kind of have a tendency to be a theme, something to consider, but
Yeah, I don't remember. John, what were you gonna say?
Well, I was just gonna mention that we talked a few meetings back about water features, possibly a fountain or something like that. And I think that would be an interesting and I think a good.
As part of a Liberty Lake Together project but that probably wouldn't be in a roundabout. I don't know, I guess it could be, but have to have water.
it probably wouldn't be as enjoyable in a roundabout as it would be in a
Right.
park where people can walk up and encounter
Yeah.
it, but
I have one word, land.
They do have one, the water feature at Post Falls, right off the off ramp
Oh,
at the entrance.
That is
Yeah.
nice.
Nobody can walk to, it's all drive by, so.
Yeah, it is nice to
It is
see, but,
pretty, yeah.
well, would everybody be comfortable suggesting that our Liberty Lake Together art project might be the Mission Kramer Park roundabout for next year and,
Landscaping.
yeah, for the landscaping and some kind of a art project of some sort there?
That sounds good.
I mean, that's a very busy intersection.
Yeah.
And then if we need to, we'll let them know that we may not be completing this year's Liberty Lake Together art and we may need to move it to next year.
To that point, tomorrow's work session is a great opportunity to talk about moving things around, just so that council's got a pre-awareness of those kinds of plans.
Yeah, I think those are the only thing we would have to move because we've already signified that the utility box wraps were to be moved and we don't have any more boxes. So that's just. But the other one's way more significant because that's a big chunk of money.
So can we go through this 2025 list real quick, just so that I can get a draft and
Okay.
update it for tomorrow? Okay. So, as of from what I'm gathering, we're keeping the Liberty Lake Together art Kramer Parkway and re-implementing that project for 25 potentially.
We'll let them know it's a possibility.
Okay, so I'm gonna leave that on there. Then I'm also gonna put Liberty Lake Together art Kramer Roundabout, Kramer Mission Roundabout
Uh-huh,
for 25.
okay. What in dollar amount are we gonna put with that? The same
Honestly,
thing?
I think I would just put the same thing.
Yeah.
But,
We'll just put the same thing.
okay. And then utility box wraps, they should be released next year. Do you want to keep it at 4,000? Those have traditionally been donated by STCU to the tune of anywhere of 800 to 1,000. That was a couple years ago. That could be different now, but I think 4,000 is probably plenty.
Okay, let's keep that then.
Okay, and then Story Walk, Outlet Channel Trail, I could add the $5,000 that I think was on there from past years. I'll double check that.
Yeah, whatever's previous year.
Previous years. Beautification, we've consistently kept that at 5,000. Is everybody in agreement with the description of graffiti barrels, rotating art wall, bike racks, benches?
I'm just wondering if we should flip-flop the budget and put 5,000 at programming and put 10,000
Yeah.
at beautification, because we're just not spending the programming now until we get a little more organized on what we're gonna do. Cause I think for 5,000, we could do a couple small things for next year.
Yeah,
That good, doable? Yes?
sounds good.
That a yes? Okay. And then Smarty boards, do we want to keep 2 on there to the tune of roughly 2,500?
Well,
each? They,
we went to almost 3,000, so
Yeah.
we have to, if we want to, it'd have to be, probably, I'd put 7,000.
we want 2 on there?
Or do we want to just stick with one a year and spread it out because we've got a lot of other stuff going on?
It is an easy project.
Yeah,
Keep that in mind.
I don't know.
or just get
Like
it done.
one a
See, they
year
did say there
and-
might be a slight price break for doing 2.
I think 2 sounds good.
I think 2 sounds good.
Well, I believe it came at 27 and some change, so if we go to 6,000, we should be.
For a little bit of a contingency for covering
Yeah.
the parts and just installation,
Mhm,
6,000, okay.
mhm.
Trailhead Beam project moved to 26,
Yeah,
okay.
because of the library design and all that stuff is
Yep.
gonna take a while.
Rock art, do we want to put that on 26? With pavilion and the comp plan and,
Yeah,
I think just till we determine a final location and design.
yeah,
pavilion playground, I think it's worthy of good discussion tomorrow night, but do we want to put that on 26? For draft paper purposes, or do you want to leave it in 25?
if we ended up putting a budget number to it, I just don't see it happening in 25, given all this comp plan stuff and community input and
And then the design, potentially,
then
the design and
then getting a bids. and-
procurement of, it could be a process.
I would put that on 2026. And it's probably not coming out of our budget anyway, because
No,
we're probably just influencing what the council might want to do.
okay.
I mean, we could put it in 25 and put, just indicate,
Pavilion Playground Community Outreach. maybe.
yeah, maybe put that in.
Do we want a dollar amount associated with the community outreach?
Do we need money for that?
It depends on what kind of outreach you would be proposing.
You could just propose to the council, next year is the year we plan to have community outreach. So it's not in the document per se, but it's the planning year, if you will, for the playground.
Mhm.
And then 26 will be the year of implementation.
Yeah.
With the dollar amount in the budget.
Right, but I mean, we might need a little money in the budget for if we wanted to do a survey, because I'm assuming there's a cost associated with a survey.
If we did one internally, no. If we hired someone to do one, yes. But again, that goes back to what you would want to, my recommendation would be to not hire someone to do
Right.
one. We could handle that in-house.
I've seen them have some community meetings, because I just happened to visit a park. I was somewhere, I was in Scottsdale, and I walked through a park and they had some parks kind of people there, and they had Post-it notes, and they had all these different boards in which, there was like a suggestion, and then so they were seeing where the energy was. For if you wanted a slide or a swing or a drinking fountain or a water filling station or
They did
whatever
that,
it
they
was.
did that same thing here in this room with the county when they were planning for the regional park
Oh, yeah.
changes. So they had the boards of different concepts and you
magnets.
could put the Post-it notes on,
Yeah,
of your opinions on each of the concept designs.
so if we did a few things like that and potentially an in-house survey of some sort, we probably don't really, you have Post-it notes, right?
Yes, lots of those.
But I would think I would put something in 2025 about the community thing, just, it wouldn't have a budget number, just how the symphony is sitting there, so they know that we want to get community input in 2025.
Okay.
For the playground.
All right.
And then implementation in 2026 of same.
All right. So I'll redraft this tomorrow and email it out and print it also for those of you.
And
that
then do we know, and then for 2026, we're gonna have a few things?
2026 is not as dialed in, so and Laura, I'll kind of defer to you since you've been here. But the outline years, we just kind of run through them fairly quickly. It's the next year is the one that we really focus I don't know that I'd get
We've just
overly,
used. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I don't know that I'd get into too awful much conversation with council about 26.
No, we've used the outline years mainly as placeholders of ideas that are a little more developed. So we have the running list at the bottom that's really undeveloped ideas that people have suggested. And then the outline years are ideas that have some development that we just don't want to lose track of. But you're right, Jen, it's really the next year that we've put the focus on.
Right, like we probably, for 2026, we could put the boulder, interactive boulders and
Remove Smarty boards technically.
right,
Remove Smarty. So I'll update.
yeah, just kind of spruce that up a little bit.
Yeah.
And keep our same categories and.
Okay.
Since swimming pool was number 1, should we put that in 2027? I don't know. It's like way
I don't
out
think
there.
this commission is gonna be building a swimming pool.
Well, I mean, should we talk about it or not?
We can certainly have it, well, it's Well, it's not on the unfunded project list, but I believe the funding for the swimming pool is just to research a swimming pool, correct?
It's a siting survey. So they, essentially what that means is we would hire somebody to go out and say, here are potential locations that meet your specification for a community swimming pool. And then once that's done, our take would be to present that to council and then decide if they are committed to moving forward to invest money into acquiring any of those sites.
For a potential pool at some point,
But at that point, it would be for a pool, yes.
because in the past, they've taken it to voters 2 times.
And that would be something, it really depends on what the proposed budget is, because if they were, the reason it went to voters was because there were bonds associated with it. And likely that would be the case again. Pools
Right.
aren't cheap, but
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then real quick for 26, do we want to leave the Liberty Light Together art to the tune of 12.5, or do we want
Oh,
to
no.
leave it in and change it to 32.5 so it's consistent with the others?
Yes.
All right, so I've got 20,026 lined out. For the sake of time and simplicity, do we want to just leave 27 as is, or would you like any changes to that? It gets difficult to try to predict out once you get out of here
Yeah.
too.
I mean, the pavilion mural extension, Laura?
That was where we had just discussed turning the corner with it. I know, Jen, you brought up some potential complications for that. And then we also talked about if we rebuild the ticket booth, that you could do some mural work in the window insets to make it kind of in line with the mural and some of the historic details that we have on that structure. I think you can leave it in there. I don't know that, do we need dollar amounts that far out, Jen?
We've always done it that way. My recommendation would be just to leave them, but you
Can we carry down the Liberty Light Together art then?
we
And-
can, it's whatever you tell
Yeah,
me to write.
I mean, I would keep our same categories unless they're specific to one project.
Okay.
If you're leaving the mural extension or just any type of mural enhancement, I would leave it at 10.
Okay,
The feedback I've been getting recently from artists is more money is better.
Okay, so I'll add Liberty Light Together art for 32.5, just like the other years.
right.
I will change programming and beautification numbers. I'll switch them
Mm-hmm.
like the other. I will leave symphony the way it is, and goat statue is what it is, 10,000.
Well, I would put 20,000 if it's gonna be in there. 'Cause-
20,000 sound good?
I would increase it because the mirror or the statues in Rocky Hill at 10, I know that the artist lost money on it.
Okay, what do you think it should be?
I think 20 is a good number.
Okay,
Okay. All right. So I have enough for a draft,
okay,
if everybody's comfortable with this, and then we'll get through the discussion tomorrow night with council. Maybe some things will change. And then if there are changes, I'll draft it again, bring that back to the August meeting where we can finalize a recommendation for council.
okay. I'm gonna suggest, because I know we went long and we still have Jen to go through the staff report really quick, but maybe next year when we go through this process, we have an extra meeting 1 month and just focus on this. And then it won't be so drawn out. So
It's a good idea.
let's try to remember that next year. Jen, staff report.
Yes, I will go quick. A lot of the items on the report are just continuing from month to month. No real park and facility updates to be aware of. The one thing that is new and different, and you have photos of the updated graffiti barrels that the students did kind of at the last minute. Last week, there were 3 of the barrels. Our staff pressure washed and steam cleaned them, sent them over, and they got them done pretty quickly right at the end of their school year. So crews are working on clear coating those and getting them out. One of them actually specifically says farmer's market, which is really cool. So it will go to farmer's market at Town Square. And then just kind of on hold with the Harvard Trailhead entrance. park project with Greenstone. They plan to hopefully move forward with something in September or October. Let's see. Really isn't too much in there that we haven't already discussed. You wanted to mention the Liberty Lake Together,
Yeah,
Better
if you-
Together Fund?
If you see this, and I won't bore you with the details of it, but I went to the kickoff meeting and it's a citizens group and they're working in conjunction with Inovia, which is a big philanthropic company and a nonprofit, and they're doing some matching funds, but basically, you know, they're going to do things to enhance the community. And I wrote on the little suggestion sheet and just briefly talked with one of the founders that maybe they would do a collaborative project with Parks and Arts Commission. And they would have the funding for it. So she thought that was interesting. So at some point, as that group grows, then I may have them come and do a presentation to see how we might partner with them on something enhancing the community. Because it seems like our missions are very much aligned because they're at Liberty Lake Better Together Fund, and we're the Liberty Lake Together people. So there you have it.
Did you say Inovia matches the funds?
Just the first, well, Inovia has a private donor that's gonna match the first 12,500.
Okay.
So there'll be a $25,000, hopefully pot by the end of the year. I think the match is good for, and then they'll start working on what projects, but they want things that benefit the community. That could be art, that could be bicycle stuff. I mean, it's a very wide mission. So I think some of it would easily dovetail in with what we're doing. So we'll see if they reach out to me. All right.
Commissioner update, we interviewed a student commissioner last week. The mayor is wanting to move forward to the city council for appointment confirmation. We're working through background and all of that right now. So hopefully July 16th, that will go to council. If not, it will be August. Farmers market sign up. I can't remember if I sent an email out, but there was proposition from, I think it was a city council member or the mayor, one of the two, that is asking about having commissioners of all groups potentially volunteering at market.
Yeah, I mean, that's something we've been talking about for a while, and it just to make sure that we have not only the opportunity for everyone to participate, but also more opportunity to cover all of the slots. So if you've not already received that, we should be able to get that out to you.
I don't think I've seen anything.
She was going to send an email out to each commission. So if you haven't seen it, it will be coming.
Okay.
And it will be coming from the mayor. She was going to send a personal email to all the commissions, inviting them to be part of this. And there's a calendar if you're interested that you will end up signing up blocks of time on.
Okay.
Two more things, barefoot, booth sign up. We can, maybe I'll have you do a sign up for a barefoot booth like you do the farmer's market. So we'll do an online sign up form for blocks of time for barefoot instead of paper copy like we've been doing. And the last thing is, does anybody want to volunteer for the July 16th Parks and Arts Commission report for council?
I won't be here.
I can do it.
You can do
Perfect.
it.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Wonderful.
And then
That's all I have.
Just as a reminder, Barefoot is August 3rd, which is before our August meeting. So when you see that sign up sheet, we're sharing a booth with Community Engagement Commission, I believe.
Yes.
And so the goal is to have at least one Parks and Arts person and one community engagement person in the booth. And I think the event runs from 9 to
9 to 4 roughly.
Yeah. So I don't know if we want to do 2-hour shifts and see if we can fill that. If more than that come in, volunteer, it's
good.
fine, but we need to have someone in the booth that whole time because
Is that something you can share with David so he can share with his commissioners and we'll just have one shared form? Okay, perfect.
but I worked the booth for 2 or 3 hours last year and you really need 2 people because we're giving out the wristbands for the rides. And then we usually have an activity. We had them paint rocks, which went really well. So it gets a little crazy.
Would you like me to get bike helmets to give away from Scope? I can.
Or do you want to save them in case we have an event? How many times will they give them?
We get helmets every year. We have a lot to give away.
Okay. I don't know, we could give them away. Is that?
Maybe that would be in tandem with PD.
Sure, make sure that we get a donation form so that we're
Yeah,
routing them through properly.
yeah. It's good.
Well,
good
are they
point.
coming from Scope? Is that,
So
that's still a
if-
donation?
If scope, do you have a separate booth? Or you,
No,
but they would be
Right.
going from Scope to individuals,
yeah,
then you're probably golden, but
Yeah, I'd say if Scope is.
Yeah.
Maybe have a Scope volunteer there handing them out.
yeah. It
If-
could
if
be
city
me or
staff
it
or
could be some.
Commissioners are handing them out.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
Can
would-
we?
I mean, can a Scope person be in your booth?
Yeah, sure, of
Okay,
course.
Can we have the police booth next to us
Yeah.
too? Cause that was help, cause
Yeah.
they had to go and I had to watch their booth for a second and it was a good combination
And
of,
I think the helmets and Scope would be a great tie with PD, so we could just kind of blend them all together.
okay.
maybe we could get one more table and
Yeah.
have that be the Scope table or something.
Yeah,
that's
we
a great
probably
idea.
need a table.
Yeah,
Send me what you want and I'll make sure we get that lined out.
Okay.
Okay,
all right, anything else,
No.
Jen?
that's all I have.
Well, that completes our agenda. Keep in mind, we're gonna be scheduling our September 2nd meeting, which falls on Labor Day. It'll probably be the following Monday. We can vote on that next meeting. And I need a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor? Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.